Yeah, what's going on? It's been a minute since I made a video on the channel here, and a big part of that is I just haven't really had anything that I kind of wanted to say about any games, or I haven't. A lot of the games I'd made stuff on before, I just haven't really been playing or feeling too much. I've been playing a fair amount of Destiny 2 Forsaken. The expansion's really quite good, but I don't know, I just haven't. I've kind of. For me, the last few weeks, like most of my gaming's kind of been spent in that sense, just like sticking a podcast on and just chilling out, and I've not really been properly captured by anything, except in the past week or so, week and a half, I picked up Gwent, the Witcher card game, and it's kind of really captured me, and I think I'm gonna probably continue playing it. And I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about why I think Gwent works as a card game, and also maybe just touch on the new expansion that's coming up, and just generally sort of talk about a few of those things. So, Gwent, how does it work? If you played The Witcher 3, you probably would have come across it at some point. You play cards, you play one card each turn, and you have to basically try and end the round with more power. Each card has an associated power. You want to end the round with more power than your opponent to win that round. You've got to win 2 out of 3 rounds, and you can pass at any time. So it's pretty simple in its fundamentals. Obviously, as with any of these card games, the complexity is introduced when you start thinking about mechanics that the cards have and trying to build a deck with an element of cohesion that kind of works properly together. Now, I am not by any means a card game veteran, not collectible card game veteran anyway, but I actually really like the style of gameplay. Like, I grew up playing a lot of like playing card games, like Rummy and all things like that. That was what I would do with my family when we were on holiday all the time. I also like playing poker, stuff like that. Like, I am kind of that way inclined, and those are kind of the games I actually tend to gravitate more towards when it comes to more of a thinking game, a strategy game. Don't get me wrong, I've played things like Go and chess, and I can totally appreciate just how wonderfully designed those games are, but I just don't tend to find them as fun to play. Now, what's prevented me in the past in getting into any of these card games, like Magic the Gathering, for example, which is, from in my experience, a very good game, it's kind of been the cost associated with it. You can't really play Magic for that cheap, especially if you want to actually have a chance at competing with anybody. And similarly, I've played a little bit of Hearthstone in the past, and that feels like a game that, while there are technically free-to-play elements included into it, it doesn't feel like you're getting a proper experience with that game unless you actually start putting money into it. Now, I really enjoyed playing Gwent in The Witcher when I was playing The Witcher 3, and to the point that I ignored quite a lot of the main story stuff so that I could just go and play more Gwent. And then when the standalone game came out, I picked it up for a little bit. I kind of played it a bit, but for whatever reason, I think I was probably just more invested in something else at the time. I didn't really have, wasn't looking for a new game, and I didn't really carry on with it. And I think a part of it was also that I kind of just assumed it would be like any other digital card game, where unless you're willing to sort of either put just stupendous amounts of time in or put some money into the game, you weren't going to get anywhere. And at the time, I wasn't prepared to do that. I've since heard, though, that Gwent is actually among the most free-to-play friendly card games on the market. And so I decided to pick it back up because I was just sort of craving a card game of some kind. And as it turns out, it was arguably a pretty bad time to pick the game up because there's a huge overhaul coming called Homecoming, and that's going to be coming at the end of October, I think, so in about a month and a half or something. The game's literally going to be, all the cards are basically going to be either taken out of the game or changed completely. Effectively, I suppose you could say it's like Gwent 2, but it's kind of more like Gwent 1, to be honest. And so you could say that it was a bad time to get into the game because they're about to change everything. But actually, the developers have confirmed that they're going to give everybody a full value on their cards when the new content patch drops. Now, that essentially what that means is you can use what's called scraps in the game to craft new cards. Now, you can obviously either buy kegs using ore or money, and you get random cards. You get 5 random cards. Or you can choose a specific card to craft, and it costs, a variety of different amounts of this scrap, depending on obviously the rarity of the card and stuff like that. Now, you can also mill cards in the game. Now, if you mill the card, you will destroy it, basically, kind of like shard it down and get scrap out of it. But like, if you mill a card, you don't get enough to then craft that card with the same amount of scrap. It's not like a 1-for-1 transfer. But what they're saying is that post Homecoming, your entire collection will automatically be milled for full scrap value. So what that means is any cards that you earn now, any kegs you buy now, or any kegs that you earn now in the game, you open, you build up a collection now, you're going to get full value on them. And arguably, it'll be worth more to do that now when the game is going to change, because you get a whole bunch of random cards in all your kegs and everything, and it doesn't really matter what you get, because you're going to turn those into full value so that you can craft specific cards and you can build a deck using that when Homecoming drops. So if for whatever reason you've just stumbled across this video because you're thinking about starting Gwent now and you're concerned about the new patch that's coming out, don't worry about that. Like, just get going and play a little bit. For a start, you're going to be able to learn the game. This is kind of my approach to it was, right, well, I'll learn the game, I'll learn the fundamentals, and as much as while the game is going to change, I dare say the kind of approach to thinking and the fundamental, game ideas, they're still going to be transferable at the very least. And in terms of why I think Gwent works in such a good way compared to some of the other card games on the market is, I think, largely around the size of the decks and just the way that the deck's kind of put together. Your deck is going to be 25 cards in Gwent. Now, you can go up to 40, and they are actually changing the minimum to the 30 when Homecoming comes out, so we've yet to see what effect that's going to have. But it's 25 cards, and that's quite low for a card game. And a lot of the time what that means is, especially if you build it and you pilot the deck in the correct way, you're going to be able to see, 20, or if not all 25 cards in your deck. And that is a huge thing to have in a card game, because it allows you to really put cards in there that rely on the kind of cohesion that they have when fitting together with other cards, because you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to be able to play them. And there are, that's an experience which I find frustrating with my limited experience with card games in the past, which is you might know that there's a card sitting somewhere in your deck that could win you the game in a certain scenario, but you don't pull it, and then you can't use it, and so you can't win the game, and that just doesn't feel very good. And you don't really get that so much with Gwent. It happens occasionally. There is randomness in the draws. It does happen occasionally, but most of the time you're going to be able to use like most of your deck, especially if you are putting it together properly to make sure that you're pulling things out. What's called thinning your deck is pulling things out of your deck to reduce the randomness in the pools that you get later on and stuff like that. And trying to think about how to get together a deck that means that you're going to be able to use all 25 cards, plus make all those 25 cards work together and be able to tackle a whole bunch of different scenarios, I find to be a really interesting foray into the game. Now, that isn't necessarily exclusive to this game. I dare say people who are really into Magic or Hearthstone or whatever are just going to say that's the same over there, and that's a large appeal over there, and that's fine. It's just not something that I've never delved into a card game enough to kind of start to understand that, and this is the first time I'm starting to do so, and I'm just really dipping my toes in. But it's an experience I've been really enjoying, and I also find the system in Gwent of playing a card a turn rather than using a power system really appeals to me. I think perhaps because it just slots in more with card games that I know, as in traditional playing card games. That kind of just makes more sense on that level, as well as also you not having to curve out. You don't have to. There's nothing kind of more frustrating than just pulling a bunch of sort of like 6 and 7 mana cards, say in Hearthstone, without you know, on your first few turns, and then not being able to play them, and just having some aggro deck just smash your face down because there's nothing you can do. And that's not a problem in Gwent. You can always play a card. You can, and it really then just becomes about making the right decision and playing your cards in the right order, reacting to your opponent's hand in the right way, and it just puts the emphasis so much on the two players kind of actually using their wits to battle against each other, rather than just relying on what happens to be pulled out of the deck. And that's something that just really appeals to me. And so yeah, that's what I've been playing a lot of over the last week or so, and I'm looking forward to Homecoming. You know, hopefully it all goes smoothly and they improve on the game. Now, there's every possibility that won't happen, but kind of everyone in the Gwent community has their fingers crossed that they get it right. And I do trust CDPR to at least do the best they can. I think the decision they made to kind of abandon the game as it was and really just start putting development efforts into creating effectively a total overhaul for the game, almost like a new game, I think is the right thing to do. I think it's a difficult decision to make from both a community management standpoint and a business standpoint, but I think it was the right one. And I think they have the pedigree over there and the passion and the consumer focus based on their other properties that they'll get it right. And you look at the Witcher games, for instance, and the first Witcher game was a strong like narrative RPG with a lot of decent elements, but there was a marked improvement with The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, and then followed up with, you know, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is in many people's minds among the greatest games ever made. And these are people that are constantly striving to get things right, to improve, and I think that comes across in the products they make, and I'm hoping that philosophy shines through with Gwent. And the other thing is I'm just kind of a lot more open now, I think, to delving into some of these card games. I've kind of shied away from it in the past. I like them in theory, but have just never really got too much into them. But this is I've been really quite taken with it, and Artifact's coming out in November, so I'm going to keep an eye on that and see how that works. That looks complicated as shit to play, but a lot of these things make more sense when you actually sit down and play them. So that's something I'm interested in. And yeah, that's just an update. I realised I hadn't made anything on the channel in a while, and kind of want just to say why and talk about what I had been playing. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. There's buttons at the bottom of the video, so use them if you want. And I'll see you later. Bye.